In 1954, an entire mining town in California vanished without a trace. 847 people, erased like they were never there. No warning, no bodies, no trace it ever existed. Within 24 hours, the maps were changed. The reports were sealed. Officially, Millbrook was never real. The last person seen was a woman in a blue dress. But 70 years later, the town came back, and so did the woman in the blue dress. Hit subscribe before the next town disappears. Marcus Chun had been flying drones professionally for 8 years, mapping everything from construction sites to archaeological surveys. He'd never heard a bell ring through his headphones until October 15, 2024. At exactly 3:17 p.m., 40 miles northwest of Bakersfield, California. The sound came through crystal clear, metal on metal, rhythmic, deliberate. Impossible. His DJI Mavic 3 was equipped with a standard camera, not audio recording equipment. Yet there it was, the unmistakable toll of a church bell echoing through his noise-canceling headphones. Marcus checked his altimeter. 800 feet. No settlements for miles according to his GPS. He'd been hired by Caltrans to survey potential highway expansion routes through the Carrizo Plain. Empty land. Forgotten scrubland. Nothing but sagebrush and jackrabbits for 30 miles in any direction. But his drone's camera was showing him something else entirely. Below, nestled in a valley that shouldn't exist on any topographical map, sat a town. Complete. Intact. Abandoned. A white church steeple rose from the center, its bell tower clearly visible. As Marcus watched, frozen in his camping chair beside his truck, the bell swung again. The sound filled his headphones. He yanked them off. Silence. Just wind across the plain. He put them back on. The bell tolled a third time. Marcus's hands trembled as he adjusted his drone's camera angle. The town spread below him like a photograph from 1950. Main Street ran straight down the middle. Two-story buildings lined both sides. A water tower stood at the eastern edge. Cars, old ones with rounded hoods and chrome bumpers, sat parked along the street as if their owners had just stepped inside for coffee. But no people. No movement except the bell. He checked his flight app. According to his GPS, his drone was hovering over empty grassland. The satellite view on his phone showed nothing but brown earth and scattered vegetation. Yet his camera feed displayed an entire town that cartography said didn't exist. Marcus screenshotted everything. Video recorded everything. His drone's internal GPS logged coordinates that, according to every map service on Earth, pointed to absolutely nothing. The bell stopped ringing. His drone's battery warning chimed. 12% remaining. Enough for maybe 5 more minutes of flight time. Marcus fought every instinct telling him to land immediately and instead piloted lower, dropping to 300 feet for closer detail shots. The main street sign read, Millbrook, Poppy 847. Every car was parked perfectly. No rust. No flat tires. Chrome still gleaming as if freshly polished. A Chevrolet Bel Air. A Ford pickup. A Plymouth sedan. All from the early 1950s. Shop windows displayed prices that belonged to Eisenhower's America. Fresh bread 15 cents in the bakery. Coca-Cola 5 cents at the general store. A barbershop pole still rotated slowly, red and white stripes catching afternoon sunlight that somehow felt wrong. Too golden, too warm for October. His battery dropped to 8%. Marcus pulled the drone up and started the return flight, but not before capturing one final image. A woman in a blue dress standing in the church doorway. She raised her hand as if waving. The camera feed cut to black. His drone landed automatically when the battery hit critical levels. Marcus immediately connected it to his laptop, hands shaking as he transferred the files. Everything was there: 43 photos, 12 video clips, GPS coordinates that placed an impossible town in the middle of documented nowhere. He opened Google Earth. Satellite imagery showed empty plains at those exact coordinates. He cross-referenced with USGS topographical maps. Nothing. Historical surveys from the Bureau of Land Management. Empty land, surveyed and documented as uninhabited since the 1800s. But his photos didn't lie. Marcus spent that night in his truck, unable to sleep, staring at the image of the woman in blue. Her face was too distant to make out clearly, but her posture suggested youth. The way she stood in the doorway looked expectant, as if she'd been waiting. At sunrise, he drove to the coordinates. Empty grassland stretched to the horizon. No church, no main street, no town, just sagebrush and the occasional jackrabbit. He walked the area where his GPS insisted the church should stand. The ground was undisturbed, natural, wild. Marcus knelt and scraped away surface dirt with his hands. 6 inches down, his fingers hit something hard. Metal. He dug faster, uncovering a corroded brass plate the size of a paperback book. Etched into its surface, Millbrook Cemetery, established 1947. He photographed the plate, then reburied it. His hands were filthy, nails caked with dirt that smelled wrong. Too sweet, like flowers left too long in water. Back in his truck, Marcus called his client and reported equipment malfunction. Partial survey completed. Would need to return the following week to finish the job. Instead, he drove straight to the Kern County Historical Society in Bakersfield. The librarian, a woman in her 70s named Dorothy, perked up when Marcus mentioned Millbrook. "You're the third person to ask about that place this year," she said, leading him to a filing cabinet marked Unexplained Local History. Inside was a folder labeled Millbrook Incident, 1974. Dorothy pulled out a manila envelope containing newspaper clippings, official documents, and black and white photographs. Millbrook was a company town, she explained, built in 1947 by Carrizo Mining to house workers extracting rare earth minerals from the mountains. Population peaked at about 800 people. Marcus examined the photographs. Main Street looked exactly as his drone had captured it, except these photos showed people. Families walking the sidewalks, children playing, cars in motion rather than perfectly parked. What happened to it? Dorothy's expression darkened. Nobody knows. On September 23, 1974, the entire town simply vanished. She handed him a newspaper clipping from the Bakersfield Californian, dated September 25, 1974. Mining town mysteriously abandoned. Authorities are investigating the complete abandonment of Millbrook, a company town housing 847 residents, approximately 40 miles northwest of Bakersfield. Sheriff's deputies responding to reports of radio silence found the town empty but otherwise undisturbed. All personal belongings remain in place. Vehicles sit parked as if residents stepped away momentarily. No signs of violence or struggle were discovered. Carrizo Mining Corporation issued a statement claiming all employees had been relocated due to operational restructuring, but could not provide documentation supporting this claim. The company has since refused further comment. The case remains under investigation. Marcus read the article twice. 847 people don't just disappear. The investigation lasted 6 months, Dorothy continued, pulling out official reports. FBI got involved when Carrizo Mining's corporate records showed no evidence of any relocation program. Bank accounts for Millbrook residents remained untouched. Social Security Administration had no forwarding addresses. It's like they all just ceased to exist. She handed him a Sheriff's Department photograph labeled Millbrook Main Street, September 24, 74. Every car was parked exactly where Marcus had seen them through his drone. Same positions, same vehicles. The really strange part, Dorothy whispered, is what happened next. Marcus leaned closer. Within a year, every map was updated to remove Millbrook. USGS surveys were altered. County records were amended to show the land as uninhabited wilderness. Official policy became that Millbrook had never existed. That's impossible, Dorothy shrugged. Tell that to the families still looking for their relatives. We get calls every few months. People searching for grandparents, siblings, childhood friends who lived in Millbrook. Official response is always the same. No such place ever existed. Marcus showed her his drone photographs on his phone. Dorothy's face went pale. These were taken yesterday? Yesterday afternoon. I have video footage of the church bell ringing. Dorothy stared at the images, scrolling through each one slowly. When she reached the photo of the woman in blue, she gasped. "What is it?" Dorothy hurried to the filing cabinet and pulled out a missing person report dated October 15th, 1974. The photograph attached showed a young woman with dark hair and a warm smile. She was wearing a blue dress. Sarah Chun, Dorothy read from the report. Age 24. Teacher at Millbrook Elementary. Last seen on September 23, 1974. Marcus stared at the photograph, then at his phone screen. The woman in his drone footage could be Sarah Chun. The dress was identical. This woman filed the missing person report? No, Dorothy said quietly. This report was filed by her brother. He spent 40 years searching for her before he died in 2014. Never gave up believing she was still alive somewhere. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. What was her brother's name? Dorothy checked the paperwork. David Chun. He was a surveyor. Worked for various engineering firms throughout California. Marcus's father had been David Chun. That night, Marcus sat in his apartment in Los Angeles, surrounded by every document he'd inherited when his father died 10 years earlier. He'd never paid much attention to the boxes of old surveying equipment, maps, and records. His father had been obsessively private about his work, claiming it was just boring technical stuff. Now Marcus understood why. Hidden in a box labeled Retirement Projects were dozens of topographical maps covering the Carrizo Plain. Each map was annotated in his father's precise handwriting, with red circles marking the exact coordinates where Marcus had found Millbrook. Notes filled the margins. Sarah confirmed here, 1982. Bell heard during flyover 1989. Town visible on aerial survey 1995. Photographs developed blank, 1998. Audio equipment malfunctioned, 2003. At the bottom of the box, Marcus found a letter addressed to him, dated 1 week before his father's death. Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've found Millbrook. I always hoped you wouldn't have to carry this burden. But it seems the town chooses its own witnesses. Sarah was my twin sister. We were born 4 minutes apart. When she vanished, part of me vanished too. I spent 40 years trying to bring her home. The truth is simpler and more horrible than any conspiracy. Millbrook didn't just disappear, it was displaced. Moved somewhere between here and elsewhere. The mining operation broke through to something that shouldn't have been disturbed. The town exists in a space that overlaps our world only sometimes, only for certain people, only when it wants to be found. I've seen Sarah 3 times since 1974. She hasn't aged. She waves at me the same way she did when we were children. She's waiting for something, but I could never figure out what. The equipment in this box might help you understand what I couldn't. Don't try to enter the town. Don't get too close. Takes people. Marcus took Sarah, and it's been trying to take me for decades. Be careful. Be smart. And when you see her, tell her I never stopped looking. Love, Dad. Beneath the letter was a piece of equipment Marcus had never seen before. A modified radio scanner with handwritten frequency notations taped to its side. A note read, Millbrook Emergency Channel, 462.125 MHz. Active only during manifestation events. Marcus connected the scanner to external speakers and tuned to the specified frequency. Static filled his apartment. He was about to turn it off when a voice broke through the white noise. Day 13 of September, 1974. This is Millbrook Emergency Services. We are experiencing some kind of temporal disturbance. Residents are advised to remain indoors until further notice. The church bell will ring hourly to maintain temporal anchor. Marcus's blood turned to ice. The transmission was crystal clear, as if broadcast from next door. But according to the timestamp in the corner of his scanner's display, he was receiving a signal from 50 years ago. Anyone receiving this transmission, please respond. We are cut off from outside communication. Attempts to leave town result in spatial displacement back to Main Street. Dr. Morrison believes we are experiencing some form of dimensional shift caused by the mining operation. The signal cut to static. Marcus grabbed his phone and called Dorothy at the Historical Society. It went straight to voicemail. He checked the time. 11:47 p.m. He tried again at 6 a.m. Dorothy? This is Marcus Chin. I need to know everything about the Carrizo mining operation. What exactly were they mining? Marcus? You sound terrible. Are you all right? I found my father's research. Millbrook is still there. Still active. I'm getting radio transmissions from 1974. A long pause. Meet me at the library in an hour. And Marcus? Bring recording equipment. Dorothy was waiting with 3 boxes of documents when Marcus arrived. After you left yesterday, I made some calls. Contacted some old-timers who worked for Carrizo before it went under. She spread geological surveys across the table. Carrizo wasn't mining rare earth minerals. They were mining something else entirely. Something they found by accident. Marcus examined the documents. Survey reports described an underground cavity discovered at 200 feet depth. Initial assessments suggested a natural limestone cave system. Further investigation revealed manufactured structures of unknown origin. Look at this. Dorothy pointed to a handwritten note clipped to a geological survey. Structures appear to be built from an unknown metallic compound. Age indeterminate. Architecture suggests non-human origin. Recommend immediate cessation of mining operations. The note was signed by Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, chief geologist. The same Dr. Morrison mentioned in the radio transmission, Marcus realized. Dorothy nodded. I found her obituary. She died in 1975, 1 year after Millbrook vanished. Suicide. Left a note saying she couldn't live with what we unleashed. Marcus spent the rest of the morning studying Carrizo's internal documents. The mining operation had been legitimate until August 1974, when excavators broke through into what company reports described as an artificial underground complex of impossible age and design. Initial exploration teams reported strange phenomena. Electromagnetic anomalies, temporal distortions, and what one technician described as spaces that are bigger inside than outside. By September 1974, the anomalies had spread to the town itself. Residents reported time moving differently, clocks running backward, and radio signals from decades in the future. The final corporate memo, dated September 22, 1974, was marked Classified Destroy After Reading. Recommend immediate evacuation of Millbrook. Underground complex is demonstrating expansion behavior. Temporal anomalies now affecting surface structures. Dr. Morrison believes the town is being pulled into some form of pocket dimension. Military consultation advised. Marcus found Dr. Morrison's final report buried in the files. The structures we discovered are not terrestrial in origin. They appear to be components of a larger mechanism designed to create stable intersections between dimensional spaces. Our mining operation accidentally activated this mechanism. Millbrook is no longer fully anchored to baseline reality. The town exists in a state of dimensional flux, occasionally manifesting in our space but primarily existing elsewhere. Residents are alive but displaced. They experience time differently. For them, only hours have passed since September 23rd. I believe the underground complex is attempting to establish a permanent bridge between dimensions. Millbrook was an accident. The mechanism is learning, adapting. It will attempt to capture additional population centers if not stopped. Recommend immediate military intervention and permanent quarantine of the area. The report ended there. Marcus checked his phone. 12 missed calls from unknown numbers. All from the same area code. 661. Bakersfield. He called the most recent number back. Marcus. The voice was young, female, frightened. Thank God. We've been trying to reach you. Who is this? Sarah Chin. Your aunt. I need your help. Marcus's phone slipped from his hands. When he picked it up, the line was dead. But his call log showed the conversation had lasted 17 minutes, though he couldn't remember hearing anything after her name. Dorothy was staring at him. You went completely still for almost 20 minutes. You were holding the phone to your ear, but your eyes were rolled back. I couldn't wake you up. Marcus checked his phone's voice recorder app. It had been running automatically. He played back the file. His own voice, speaking calmly. I understand. Yes, I'll come tonight. The bell will ring 3 times when it's safe to approach. I have the coordinates. He had no memory of saying any of those words. That evening, Marcus drove back to the Carrizo plane with his father's equipment loaded in his truck. Scanner, electromagnetic field detector, Geiger counter, and a video camera modified with infrared capability. If he was going to disappear like his father and aunt, at least he'd leave evidence. The scanner crackled to life as he approached the coordinates. Marcus, can you hear me? This is Sarah. The town is manifesting now. You need to hurry. The mechanism is getting stronger. It's starting to reach out to other places. Marcus parked at the edge of the valley and set up his equipment. Through his infrared camera, he could see the town clearly. Lights were on in several buildings. The church bell began to ring. 3 times, just as he'd apparently agreed. Marcus grabbed his camera and started walking toward Main Street. With each step, the world around him became more solid, more real. By the time he reached the first building, he could smell bread baking. Hear voices from inside houses. See curtains moving in windows. Sarah was waiting for him in front of the church. She looked exactly as she had in the missing person photograph, unchanged by 50 years. You look just like David when he was young, she said, smiling sadly. I'm sorry we had to trick you into coming, but we're running out of time. Where is everyone? The other residents? Inside. Hiding. They're afraid of what you represent. Which is a way home, but also a way for this place to expand into your world. Sarah led him into the church. The interior was larger than the exterior suggested, with pews stretching back farther than should have been possible. At the altar stood Dr. Morrison, looking exactly as she had in 1974. The mechanism is using us as anchors, Dr. Morrison explained. It needs human consciousness to maintain stability between dimensions, but it's learning to exist without us. Soon it won't need Millbrook at all. It will be able to manifest anywhere, anytime. Marcus looked around the impossible church. How do I help you? You don't, Sarah said quietly. You document. You warn people. You make sure the world knows what's coming. But the government already knows. They covered it up. Dr. Morrison shook her head. They covered up what happened 50 years ago. They don't know what's happening now. The mechanism has been growing, learning, spreading. Other towns have been experiencing anomalies that get explained away as mass hysteria or hoaxes. She handed him a list of coordinates. Check these locations. Take your drone. Record everything. But don't get too close. Don't let yourself be drawn in like we were. Marcus looked at the list. 12 sets of coordinates spanning from Nevada to Oregon. What am I looking for? Churches, Sarah said. The mechanism always starts with churches. It uses the bells to establish temporal anchors. Why churches? Because people gather there willingly. Because they're built to last. Because faith creates a kind of psychic resonance that the mechanism can amplify. The church bell began ringing again. Faster now, urgent. You have to go, Dr. Morrison said. The manifestation is ending. If you're still here when it collapses, you'll be pulled through with us. Marcus ran. Behind him, the town began to fade like a photograph left in sunlight. By the time he reached his truck, only empty grassland remained. But his equipment had recorded everything. Over the next month, Marcus visited all 12 coordinate sets on Dr. Morrison's list. In each location, his drone discovered the same thing. Abandoned towns that didn't exist on any map, all centered around churches with bells that rang at precisely 3:17 p.m. Some towns looked like they'd been empty for decades. Others appeared freshly abandoned, with cars that shouldn't have been manufactured yet parked along streets that belonged to the wrong century. And in each town, Marcus spotted the same figure. A woman in a blue dress, waving from a church doorway. Always Sarah. Always waiting. Marcus uploaded everything to cloud storage with instructions for automatic release if he didn't check in weekly. He sent copies to journalists, researchers, and government agencies. Most ignored him. A few published his material as creepy internet fiction. But 3 people took him seriously. Dr. Amanda Foster from SETI responded with her own research. She'd been tracking anomalous radio signals from the same regions Marcus had surveyed. Signals that seemed to originate from decades in the past. When Marcus called her, her voice was tight with excitement and fear. "I've been cataloging these transmissions for 18 months, she said. Always the same pattern. Emergency broadcasts from towns that don't exist, followed by silence. But Marcus, the signals are getting stronger. And they're not just coming from your coordinates anymore." She sent him files containing dozens of audio recordings. Emergency services calls from places called Cedar Ridge, Harmony Falls, Blackwood Valley. Towns with populations in the hundreds, all reporting temporal disturbances and dimensional shifts before the signals cut out forever. "The geographic pattern is expanding outward," Dr. Foster explained during their first video call. "Like ripples in a pond. Whatever happened at Millbrook, it's spreading." Professor James Wright from UC Berkeley's Geology Department had been studying seismic anomalies in the same areas. Underground structures that appeared on deep scans but couldn't be accessed through conventional excavation. His research revealed something that made Marcus's blood run cold. "The underground complexes aren't just at Millbrook," Wright said, his weathered face grave on the laptop screen. "We've identified similar structures beneath 12 other locations across the Southwest. All of them show the same architectural signatures, non-terrestrial materials, impossible geometries, and they're all connected." Wright pulled up a 3D seismic map on his computer. Lines of connection spread beneath the Earth like a vast web, linking each complex to the others. "It's not separate sites, Marcus. It's one enormous structure with surface access points. And according to our latest scans, it's still growing." "Growing how?" "The tunnels are expanding. New chambers appearing spontaneously. Some of our equipment has detected movement down there. Mechanical sounds, construction activities. But when we send cameras down, they malfunction the moment they reach 200 feet depth." Maria Santos, an investigative journalist from the Los Angeles Times, had been researching missing persons cases throughout the Southwest. Her findings painted a picture that terrified Marcus more than any drone footage or radio transmission. "It's not random disappearances," Maria explained during their first conference call together. "There's a pattern. Every missing person report I've tracked shows the same details. People vanish near specific coordinates. Always during the afternoon hours between 3 o'clock and 4 p.m., and always after reporting strange sounds or sights." She'd compiled a database of over 300 missing persons cases spanning 5 decades. Construction workers who vanished while surveying remote areas. Hikers who never returned from trails that led through certain valleys. Geologists who disappeared while conducting soil samples. Drone operators who lost contact during routine flights. "The earliest case I found dates back to 1952, Maria continued. "A surveyor named Thomas Blackwood disappeared while mapping mineral rights in Nevada. His final radio transmission mentioned hearing church bells in an area where no churches existed." Sound familiar? Marcus studied her research files. Every disappearance occurred within a 50-mile radius of coordinates that matched the underground complex locations Professor Wright had identified. The pattern was undeniable. "There's something else," Maria said quietly. "I've been tracking the families of missing persons. 7 of them have reported receiving phone calls from their missing relatives. Calls that come from disconnected numbers, sometimes decades after the disappearances." She played an audio recording for the group. A woman's voice, shaky and desperate. "Mom? It's Jenny. I know it's been a long time, but I need you to stop looking for me. I'm okay, but I can't come home. The town won't let me leave. Please don't send anyone else to find me." The recording was dated 6 months ago. Jenny Morrison had disappeared in 1987. Together, they formed an unofficial research group dedicated to understanding what they privately called the expansion. They met weekly via encrypted video calls, sharing findings and coordinating investigations. What they discovered made global headlines seem trivial by comparison. The mechanism wasn't just learning, it was evolving. Dr. Foster's SETI equipment had detected the radio signals spreading beyond the southwest. Similar transmissions now originated from locations in Canada, Mexico, and as far away as Australia. Always the same pattern. Emergency broadcasts from towns that didn't exist, followed by dimensional manifestations that appeared briefly before vanishing. Professor Wright's seismic monitoring revealed that the underground complexes were no longer dormant. Deep drilling operations detected massive construction activity 2 miles beneath the surface. Tunnels expanding at a rate of several hundred feet per month. New chambers appearing spontaneously. And most disturbing of all, the mechanical sounds were becoming more frequent and more complex. "It's building something down there," Wright reported during their October meeting. The acoustic patterns suggest assembly operations. Industrial-scale manufacturing. But manufacturing what? Maria's investigation had uncovered government documents that painted an even grimmer picture. Classified reports dating back to the 1950s showed that federal agencies had been aware of the phenomenon for decades. Operation Closed Door, a joint military intelligence program, had been secretly monitoring and containing what they called dimensional incursion events since 1953. "They know exactly what this is," Maria said, her voice tight with anger. "And they've been covering it up for 70 years. The documents revealed that Millbrook hadn't been the first town to disappear. Similar incidents had occurred throughout the 20th century, always explained away as mass evacuations, natural disasters, or administrative errors. A mining town in Colorado vanished in 1961. A military outpost in Nevada disappeared in 1968. A research station in Alaska ceased to exist in 1971. Each incident followed the same pattern. Dimensional anomalies, temporal distortions, then complete displacement to what the documents called parallel dimensional space. The affected populations remained alive but trapped in a reality that existed adjacent to normal spacetime. The mechanism is using them as an invasion force, Dr. Foster realized during one particularly troubling call. Every person it captures becomes part of its ability to manifest in our reality. The more people it takes, the stronger its foothold becomes. Marcus felt sick. That's why Sarah keeps appearing at every new manifestation site. She's not trying to escape. She's recruiting. The evidence supported his conclusion. Surveillance footage from remote areas near manifestation sites showed the same pattern repeatedly. A woman in blue appearing at the edge of abandoned towns, waving to passing vehicles or aircraft. Within weeks of each sighting, new disappearances would be reported in the area. Professor Wright's latest seismic data provided the most terrifying revelation yet. The underground complexes weren't just connected, they were growing toward major population centers. Tunnel construction had been detected beneath the outskirts of Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Denver. At current expansion rates, the network would reach these cities within 18 months. "It's not trying to hide anymore," Wright said grimly. "It's preparing for large-scale manifestation events." Dr. Foster's radio intercepts confirmed this assessment. The emergency broadcasts were no longer coming from small towns. Recent transmissions identified themselves as coming from Phoenix Central District, Las Vegas Metropolitan Area, and Denver Urban Zone. Signals from the future, describing massive displacement events affecting millions of people. "We're receiving distress calls from cities that haven't been displaced yet," Dr. Foster explained. "The mechanism is showing us what it plans to do." Marcus spent sleepless nights reviewing the evidence, trying to understand how to stop something that existed partially outside normal reality. The answer came from an unexpected source. His father's final research notes, hidden in a safety deposit box whose key had been taped inside the modified radio scanner. David Chen's last investigations had focused on the mechanism's weaknesses. His notes revealed that the dimensional bridges required massive amounts of energy to maintain, drawn from the consciousness of displaced populations. But the bridges also created vulnerabilities, points where the barrier between dimensions became temporarily permeable. The manifestation events aren't random, Marcus realized during an emergency call with his research team. They happen at specific times when the mechanism is most vulnerable. That's why Sarah keeps trying to communicate with us. She's giving us the timing. His father's research suggested that during manifestation events, the mechanism had to lower its defenses to allow physical interaction between dimensions. For brief periods, the displaced populations could potentially be rescued, but only if someone was willing to enter the manifestation zone during those critical moments. Marcus made his decision during their final conference call on November 14, 2024. "I'm going back to Millbrook tomorrow," he announced. "During the next manifestation event, I'm going in." "Marcus, that's suicide," Maria protested. "Your father spent 40 years studying this. He never attempted a rescue mission." "Because he didn't have the equipment we have now," Marcus replied. "Dr. Foster's radio tracking can pinpoint the exact moment when the dimensional barrier is weakest. Professor Wright's seismic monitoring can tell us when the underground complex is most active. And we know from the emergency broadcasts that manifestation events last exactly 17 minutes. His plan was desperate but logical. Enter the manifestation zone during the vulnerability window, locate the displaced populations, and attempt to guide them back to baseline reality before the bridges collapsed. It had never been attempted before, but the alternative was watching the mechanism systematically displace every major city in North America. Dr. Foster's voice was strained when she spoke. "The radio signals are showing increasingly frequent manifestation events. If we're going to try this, it has to be soon. The mechanism is getting stronger every day." Professor Wright's seismic readings supported her assessment. "Underground activity has increased by 400% in the past week. Something big is coming. Multiple tunnel networks are converging on surface access points simultaneously." Maria's investigation had uncovered the timeline they were racing against. Classified documents show Operation Closed Door has been planning a controlled demolition of all known manifestation sites. They're going to use nuclear charges to collapse the underground complexes. The operation is scheduled for December 1st. Marcus felt his throat tighten. That would trap everyone forever. "Worse," Maria continued. "According to the documents, the nuclear detonations might destabilize the dimensional barriers completely. Instead of containing the mechanism, it could trigger massive, uncontrolled manifestation events across the continent. The government's solution would destroy any chance of rescue while potentially making the crisis catastrophically worse." Marcus's rescue mission had become humanity's only hope of resolving the crisis without triggering a dimensional catastrophe. On November 15th, Marcus drove back to the Carrizo plane with equipment provided by his research partners. Dr. Foster had modified her radio array to provide real-time dimensional barrier monitoring. Professor Wright had supplied seismic sensors to detect underground activity. Maria had given him a satellite communication device to maintain contact with the outside world during the manifestation event. The equipment filled his truck bed like a mobile laboratory. If he was going to attempt the impossible, he would do it with the best scientific support available. Marcus arrived at the coordinates at 2:30 p.m., 30 minutes before the predicted manifestation window. Dr. Foster's radio monitoring indicated massive dimensional instability building in the area. Professor Wright's seismic sensors detected intense mechanical activity 300 feet below ground. At exactly 3:17 p.m., the church bell began to ring. Marcus watched through his camera as Millbrook materialized around him like a photograph developing in real time. Buildings solidified from translucent outlines into fully physical structures. Cars gained substance and weight. Street signs became solid and readable. Sarah stood waiting for him in front of the church, but this time she wasn't alone. Dozens of people filled Main Street. Men, women, children, all wearing clothing from different decades. Some looked like they'd stepped out of the 1950s. Others wore modern hiking gear or construction uniforms. Marcus approached slowly, his equipment recording everything. "Sarah?" She turned toward him, and for the first time he could see her face clearly. She looked exactly like his father, but younger, frozen at the age she'd been when Millbrook disappeared. "You came back," she said softly. "I wasn't sure you would. I'm here to take you home. All of you." Sarah's expression was sad but resolute. "We can't leave, Marcus. The mechanism won't let us. But we can help you understand what's really happening here." She led him toward the church, past crowds of displaced people who watched with mixture of hope and resignation. Marcus recognized some faces from missing person reports Maria had shown him. Construction workers who'd vanished in the 1980s. Hikers who'd disappeared just months ago. All of them preserved at the moment of their displacement. Inside the church, Dr. Morrison waited at the altar, but she wasn't alone. A man in a mining engineer's uniform stood beside her, along with a woman wearing modern hiking gear and a young man in a Millbrook Elementary School teacher's badge. Representatives from each displacement event, Sarah explained. We've been working together, trying to understand the mechanism's true purpose. Dr. Morrison stepped forward. Marcus, the mechanism isn't trying to invade our reality. It's trying to preserve it. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. What do you mean? The underground complex is a preservation system, Dr. Morrison continued, built by a civilization that faced extinction from dimensional collapse. They created this mechanism to save populations from realities that were becoming unstable. The mining engineer, who introduced himself as Frank Carver from a 1961 displacement event, handed Marcus a device that looked like a cross between a radio and a geological scanner. We've been monitoring dimensional stability from inside the manifestation zones. Your reality, baseline Earth, is experiencing critical dimensional decay. The readouts on the device showed massive instability in the fabric of spacetime itself. Reality was breaking down on a fundamental level, developing cracks that would eventually lead to complete dimensional collapse. The mechanism has been selectively preserving populations that would otherwise be lost when baseline reality fails. The hiking woman, Janet Russell from a 2019 displacement, explained, "We're not prisoners. We're refugees." Marcus stared at the readings, his mind reeling. How long do we have? Dr. Morrison's expression was grim. Based on our calculations, baseline reality will experience critical cascade failure within 18 months. The dimensional barriers that hold your universe together are breaking down. The mechanism is trying to save as many people as possible before that happens. The teacher, Robert Kim from a 2023 displacement, showed Marcus recordings they'd made from inside the manifestation zones. Views of alternate realities where dimensional collapse had already occurred. Dead universes filled with floating debris and twisted spacetime. This has happened before, Robert explained. Thousands of times. The mechanism has preserved populations from hundreds of collapsed realities. We're part of a vast preservation network that spans multiple dimensions. Sarah took Marcus's hand. The government knows about the dimensional decay. Operation Closed Door isn't trying to stop the mechanism. They're trying to destroy it to prevent mass panic when the truth becomes public. Marcus felt the walls of reality crumbling around him. But the nuclear detonations would destroy the preservation system just as baseline reality collapses, Dr. Morrison finished. Billions of people would be lost forever instead of being saved. Through the church windows, Marcus could see the manifestation beginning to fade. The 17-minute window was almost over. What do I do? He asked desperately. Sarah pressed a small device into his hand. This is a dimensional anchor. It will allow you to maintain contact with us even when we're not manifesting. Use it to document everything. Tell the world what's really happening. Stop the government from destroying humanity's only chance of survival. The church began to dissolve around him. The people of Millbrook waved goodbye as they faded back into their preserved reality. Marcus found himself standing alone in empty grassland, holding the dimensional anchor. His equipment had recorded everything, but he knew the footage would be dismissed as elaborate fiction. He had 18 months to convince the world that their reality was ending and that the very thing they feared might be their only salvation. Back in Los Angeles, Marcus worked feverishly to compile his evidence. The dimensional anchor allowed him to maintain contact with the preserved populations during manifestation events. Each conversation revealed more details about the mechanism's true nature and the impending collapse of baseline reality. Dr. Foster's radio equipment detected increasing dimensional instability across North America. The readings showed reality literally tearing apart at the quantum level, with cascade failures beginning in remote areas and spreading toward population centers. Professor Wright's seismic monitoring revealed that the underground preservation complexes were expanding rapidly, rushing to build capacity for massive population transfers. The mechanical sounds had become constant, a vast construction project operating 24 hours a day. Maria's investigation uncovered the government's complete knowledge of the situation. Operation Closed Door had been monitoring dimensional decay for decades, but rather than warn the public, they had chosen to destroy the preservation mechanism to maintain the illusion of control. They're willing to let billions die rather than admit they can't save our reality, Maria said during one of their final conference calls. The nuclear strikes are scheduled for November 30th. We have 2 weeks. Marcus spent those 2 weeks creating a comprehensive documentation package. Video footage, audio recordings, scientific data, government documents, and testimony from the preserved populations. Everything needed to prove that the mechanism represented salvation, not invasion. On November 28th, he uploaded everything to every major news outlet, social media platform, and government agency simultaneously. The response was immediate and predictable. Dismissal, ridicule, and accusations of elaborate hoax. But some people listened. Dr. Foster received calls from SETI stations worldwide reporting similar radio transmissions. Professor Wright was contacted by geologists who had detected identical seismic anomalies in other countries. Maria heard from journalists who had been investigating similar missing persons patterns globally. The phenomenon wasn't limited to North America. The preservation mechanism was operating worldwide, preparing for a global dimensional collapse that would affect all of baseline reality. On November 29th, Marcus received a final call from Sarah through the dimensional anchor. "The cascade failure has begun," she said, her voice distorted by dimensional interference. "The government strikes tomorrow won't stop it. They'll accelerate it. You need to make a choice, Marcus." "What choice?" "Join us willingly, or be lost when reality collapses. The mechanism can only preserve so many people. Priority goes to those who understand what's happening and choose preservation over denial." Marcus looked out his apartment window at Los Angeles, bustling with 8 million people who had no idea their universe was ending. Traffic flowed normally. People went to work, to school, to dinner. Reality appeared stable, but the dimensional anchor's readings showed massive instability building beneath the surface. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less. The nuclear detonations will create dimensional shock waves that trigger immediate cascade failure across the continental United States. Anyone not already in the preservation network will be lost." Marcus made his decision. At 11:47 p.m. on November 29, 2024, he drove back to the Carrizo Plain one final time. Not to investigate or document, but to join the preservation network before it was too late. The manifestation was already underway when he arrived. Millbrook appeared more solid and permanent than ever before, as if it was becoming the primary reality while baseline Earth faded into translucence. Sarah waited for him at the town limits, no longer wearing the blue dress. She was dressed in modern clothes, looking like a normal person rather than a dimensional echo. "You made the right choice," she said as they walked toward Main Street. "The mechanism has been monitoring your efforts to warn people. You've been designated as a preservation priority." Around them, Millbrook bustled with activity. Thousands of people from dozens of displacement events worked together, preparing for the massive influx of refugees from the collapsing baseline reality. The town had expanded far beyond its original borders, becoming a vast metropolitan area that existed in stable dimensional space. "How many people will be saved?" Marcus asked. "As many as possible," Sarah replied. "The mechanism has been building preservation capacity for decades. Millions of people worldwide have been secretly selected based on their potential to understand and accept the truth. When cascade failure begins, they'll be automatically transferred to preserved reality." At exactly midnight on November 30th, 2024, the nuclear charges detonated. Marcus felt the shock waves tear through dimensional space like earthquakes in the fabric of reality itself. Through the preservation network's monitoring systems, he watched baseline Earth convulse as cascade failure spread across the continent in minutes. Cities winked out of existence. Mountain ranges crumbled into void. Oceans boiled away into nothing. The United States ceased to exist, followed rapidly by Canada, Mexico, and the rest of North America. But the preservation mechanism had been ready. Across the collapsing continent, millions of people suddenly found themselves in preserved towns, cities, and settlements that existed in stable dimensional space. Everyone who had been selected for preservation, scientists, artists, teachers, children, families, entire communities, was transferred to safety in the moments before their local reality collapsed. Marcus watched the readings as cascade failure spread globally. Europe vanished within hours. Asia lasted slightly longer due to its distance from the nuclear epicenter, but collapsed by dawn. Australia and South America held out for days before succumbing to the dimensional decay. Baseline Earth was gone, but humanity survived. The preservation network now housed over 2 billion people from the collapsed reality, spread across thousands of stable dimensional spaces. Each preserved location maintained the culture, knowledge, and communities that had been saved from the cascade failure. Marcus found himself assigned to documentation duties, working with other journalists and historians to record the story of Baseline Earth's collapse and humanity's preservation. The account would serve as both historical record and warning for future civilizations that might face similar dimensional decay. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the expanded Millbrook Central Square, watching children play games he remembered from his own childhood. They had been born in baseline reality but would grow up in preserved space, never knowing the universe they'd lost. Dr. Foster had established a new SETI station that monitored radio signals from other collapsing realities. Professor Wright studied the geological structure of preserved dimensions. Maria continued her investigative work, documenting the stories of refugees from baseline Earth. Sarah had been appointed as a liaison between different preserved communities, helping coordinate the vast project of rebuilding human civilization in stable dimensional space. "Do you regret it?" she asked Marcus one evening as they watched the sunset over impossible mountains that existed in preserved space. Marcus considered the question. He missed baseline Earth, the familiar geography, the natural laws, the simple reality of a universe that followed predictable rules. But billions of people were alive who would have been lost if the preservation mechanism hadn't existed. "No," he said finally. "You can't regret being saved." Sarah smiled. David felt the same way when he arrived last month. Marcus turned in surprise. "Dad's here." The mechanism preserved him from a localized cascade failure that occurred when he died. "We've been reunited in preserved space, along with millions of other families separated by the transition." That night, Marcus sat in his father's presence for the first time in 10 years, listening to stories of the decades-long investigation that had led to understanding the preservation mechanism's true purpose. "I always hoped you wouldn't have to carry this burden," David said. "But I'm proud that you chose preservation over denial when the time came." Marcus looked out the window at a night sky filled with stars that belonged to no baseline constellation, illuminating a preserved reality that had become humanity's new home. The bells still rang in Millbrook, but they no longer called to the lost. They celebrated the saved. And in the vast network of preserved dimensions, billions of human voices joined together in the simple act of continuing to exist, carrying forward the memory and culture of a universe that was gone but not forgotten. The last entry in Marcus Chen's journal, written 1 year after the collapse, read, "Today marks the anniversary of baseline Earth's end and preserved humanity's beginning. The children born since the transition will never know the fear of dimensional collapse, the uncertainty of an unstable reality, or the terror of cascade failure. They will grow up in a universe that was designed to last forever, protected by a mechanism built by a civilization that understood the most important truth. Sometimes salvation requires letting go of everything you thought was real. The woman in blue doesn't wave from doorways anymore. She's too busy helping build tomorrow. The bells don't ring as warnings or invitations. They ring as celebration. We are the survivors of the end of everything. And we are home. The mechanism is trying to save as many people as possible before that happens." The teacher, Robert Kim, from a 2023 displacement, showed Marcus recordings they'd made from inside the manifestation zones. Views of alternate realities where dimensional collapse had already occurred. Dead universes filled with floating debris and twisted spacetime. This has happened before, Robert explained. Thousands of times. The mechanism has preserved populations from hundreds of collapsed realities. We're part of a vast preservation network that spans multiple dimensions. Sarah took Marcus's hand. The government knows about the dimensional decay. Operation Closed Door isn't trying to stop the mechanism. They're trying to destroy it to prevent mass panic when the truth becomes public. Marcus felt the walls of reality crumbling around him. But the nuclear detonations would destroy the preservation system just as baseline reality collapses, Dr. Morrison finished. Billions of people would be lost forever instead of being saved. Through the church windows, Marcus could see the manifestation beginning to fade. The 17-minute window was almost over. "What do I do?" he asked desperately. Sarah pressed a small device into his hand. "This is a dimensional anchor. It will allow you to maintain contact with us even when we're not manifesting. Use it to document everything. Tell the world what's really happening. Stop the government from destroying humanity's only chance of survival." The church began to dissolve around him. The people of Millbrook waved goodbye as they faded back into their preserved reality. Marcus found himself standing alone in empty grassland, holding the dimensional anchor. His equipment had recorded everything, but he knew the footage would be dismissed as elaborate fiction. He had 18 months to convince the world that their reality was ending and that the very thing they feared might be their only salvation. Because it was expanding. New towns appeared monthly. The radio transmissions became more frequent, and the woman in blue stopped waving. Instead, she began beckoning people toward safety that looked like imprisonment, toward salvation that felt like disappearance. Marcus's final journal entry, uploaded automatically to cloud storage when he failed to check in on November 16, 2024, read, "I understand now why my father never tried to rescue Sarah. You can't rescue someone who's already been saved. The mechanism isn't our enemy. It's our lifeboat. Baseline reality is sinking, and the only choice is between preservation and extinction. The government is planning to destroy our only chance of survival because they can't accept that our universe is dying. They would rather see humanity perish than admit they can't save our reality. I'm not destroying my equipment. I'm not burning my research. Every piece of evidence needs to survive so that when the cascade failure begins, people will understand their options. The bells aren't dinner bells. They're life preservers. Sarah called me tonight. She says it's time to choose between false hope and real salvation. She says David is here now, and they're waiting for me. She's right. I am going home, to the only home that will survive what's coming. If you're reading this, don't stay away from the coordinates. Listen to the bells. Trust the woman in blue. And when reality starts to collapse around you, remember that preservation looks like disappearance only to those who don't understand that sometimes disappearing is the only way to survive. Marcus Chun was reported missing on November 16, 2024. His truck was found abandoned at the original Millbrook coordinates. His equipment was intact and still recording. But drone operators throughout the Southwest continue to report the same phenomenon. Church bells ringing in places where no churches should exist, and a woman in blue who waves from doorways that lead somewhere else. The bells ring louder now, and they're ringing more often, because time is running out. Marcus's final journal entry, uploaded automatically to cloud storage when he failed to check in on November 15, 2024, read, "The mechanism doesn't just want to observe our world anymore. It wants to replace it. Each manifestation creates a foothold, a crack between dimensions that widens with every appearance. I understand now why my father spent 40 years hunting for Sarah but never tried to rescue her. You can't rescue someone from a place that's actively recruiting. The bells aren't distress signals. They're dinner bells. Sarah called me tonight. She says it's time to come home. She says David is here now, and they're waiting for me. She's right about one thing. I am going home. But not to Millbrook. I'm destroying my equipment and burning my research. Some doors shouldn't be opened. If you're reading this, stay away from the coordinates. Don't listen to the bells. Don't trust the woman in blue. And whatever you do, don't look for me. Marcus Chun was reported missing on November 16, 2024. His truck was found abandoned at the original Millbrook coordinates. His equipment was smashed beyond repair. But drone operators throughout the Southwest continue to report the same phenomenon. Church bells ringing in places where no churches should exist, and a woman in blue who waves from doorways that lead nowhere. The bells ring louder now, and they're ringing more often,